Welcome to the No Budget Guide to Filmmaking. I'm your host, Jake the Film Guy. Chapter start. What aspiring auteur doesn't want to make their own film, their own video? It's that dream, that passion existing from a very young age that says, go for it. Do you remember when you were young and fashioned entire universes around matchsticks and straws? Where did that creative bone go? Why is it dormant? We all have a purpose, hope. We're not just floating aimlessly through life. It doesn't matter if you've been in lockup or if you've been through a divorce, or if you're an orphan. All of us are meant to create, be it art, music, dance, furniture made of cardboard, etc. I realized at a very young age that I want to make movies. What I didn't know then was just how accessible the tools would be to do it in the 21st century. Any of us can buy a consumer camera off the shelf without the checkbook of a major Hollywood studio. All it takes is a little bit of courage, a supportive team, a little imagination, and a burning desire to yell, action! What I will attempt to do over the course of this book is pare down the essentials to getting your rear off the couch and into high gear to start following that dream in 30 chapters. Ask yourself this: today, do I want to consume or do I want to create? You were made in the image of the ultimate creator. Choose to create. I'm far from where I want to be, making a dent in this world for the kingdom of heaven through media, yet my calling is finally underway. I've still got oodles to learn, don't we all? But I'm thankful to say the journey has begun. Without further ado, let's get some inspiration behind you so you can go out and start creating that short video, that church video, that stop motion animation short film, or even that first full-length feature film. Chapter Write. This is the first hurdle, writing. Sean Connery, in one of my favorite pro-fatherhood, pro-mentoring movies of all time, Finding Forrester, says to his young pupil, "The key to writing is to write." He prefaces this with, "No thinking, that comes later." You must write your first draft with your heart. You rewrite with your head. That was his idea. First of all, head on over to Celtx, C-E-L-T-X, and sign up for their free screenplay. It's online. It's a cloud-based software. It's easy to use. It's a very simplified interface for new users. Using your regular tab or return keys, you can do most formatting in a GIF, be it dialogue, screen direction, scene changes, etc. Second, follow the old man's advice. You need to write. If you haven't an earthly idea on how to write a screenplay, there are a myriad of books out there to give you some pointers. Personal favorite of mine is Save the Cat by the late Blake Snyder. While his skeleton approach to screenwriting is by no means the right way to write a screenplay, it does provide a set of training wheels to get you going. If you haven't figured it out already, there's no right when it comes to creating art, be it movies, poetry, clay, so on and so forth. Write or shoot something that you are passionate about, and the rest falls into place. Passion is contagious. Let it bleed through into your work. Our story, 12 Till Dusk, my first feature film, is a rewrite of a modern, full-length Western. The original story was a period piece, and we couldn't shoot a period piece, so we had to simplify our story by bringing it into the present times. You should too. Ask yourself, realistically, what can you do on a shoestring budget? And then keep that on the back burner as you flesh out your story. I took the Rodriguez approach. Robert Rodriguez. With my story 12 Till Dusk, and pretty much with every short film or video I've ever worked on, I write around what's available to me. If I have a motorcycle, I use it. For 12 Till Dusk, I knew that I had also a couple of firearms, the desert, a couple of different houses. There was a screen printing shop down the street that my good friend and mentor would let me use. And so I used those constraints and I adapted my characters to live and breathe in those spaces with those items. It worked out just fine. The benefit of having no budget is that you're forced to be creative. You see, the big guys can throw large amounts of money at a problem. You don't have that luxury. Having no budget forces you to tap into a different reservoir of creativity. Don't beat yourself up if you can't nab B-roll with Jimmy Carter. Plan your locations and your props around what's available. Your story should be able to function on the strength of your characters. You want that. It doesn't matter what props you have available or not. So, I recommend setting a timer on your phone. Unlike an alarm, you should just be able to ask the phone to set a timer for 15 minutes and then no further work is required. On my iPhone, if I set an alarm for 15 minutes, I have to delete the alarm later. You can use the timer app. When it expires, you'll have an obnoxious old sound effect like a car horn or something to let you know that it's time to stop and move on to something else. So try it. Work in a 15-minute block or use the Pomodoro technique and work in 25-minute blocks. If it's a short story, you won't have to do it very long. If it's a feature, you'll want to plan out how many 15 blocks or 25-minute blocks you'll need to write your story. This book, The No Budget Guide to Filmmaking, that you're either reading or watching, will end up being around 30,000 to 50,000 words. And the thought of writing it seemed pretty daunting until I realized I could break it up into chunks. All of us can manage a 15-minute block. It's not too long that we wear ourselves out, and it's not too short that we can't get anything done. You can easily get in 700 or more words in one 15-minute session in a book. If it's a proper script, and if you're following the usual formatting for the scripts, then you'll likely get in a good page, a page and a half in a 15-minute block. And that'll add up after a week and a month. It's easier on your mind, and I promise you can finish the race. It is a race of endurance. Make no mistake. Whether you're Sylvester Stallone and you're pounding out your story in 3 days, or you take 3 months, writing in 15-minute chunks will get you there without destroying your sanity. If you're writing for a short video, you likely won't need a formal script. Draft that bad boy up on Google Docs. If it's a one-man project or corporate video, you can still write in 15-minute chunks. The benefit of having no budget is you're forced to be creative. When I started writing this book, I carried this practice of 15-minute blocks over to my short stories and my scripts. Regardless of whether they are ever produced or not, I write something new most days a week because I'm committed to improving my writing over the course of my life, whether it be a screenplay or nonfiction. So much of our trade requires long-term commitment. And I don't mean that to alarm you, because you can pick this up, you can watch part of this book or read any kind of advice you want on no or low budget video and film. It doesn't matter as long as you commit to it and understand that to truly master this craft, it's going to be a long journey. I personally started on After Effects back in 2009, and before that, many DV movies when I had zero editing skills. But if you're just trying to get a one and done project in the queue, you can do it. You might just be a savant, or you might be like the majority of us and need some practice. You'll get out of your video and film what you put into it. Fair enough? When your story is done, get it to folks to review your story and do it in a real, breathing group, and then host another such group review. Maybe 20 of them, whatever it takes, and not just any group of folks. Friends and family are great, but they're probably not used to reading screenplays. The formatting does take some getting used to. Let alone does your family, or for that matter your friends, really know how to offer sound advice without being biased towards you. Find people that deconstruct scripts, fellow filmmakers, actors, actresses, people that are willing to offer pointers that will build you up at the same time, but also give you that constructive advice that you need. You will need supporters in this monumental undertaking of yours, short or feature film. When it comes to video, you need your supporters. Find the people who will give you the raw truth and that constructive criticism you need to fine-tune your craft and boost your courage. You need both. And put some food out. Your team will appreciate it. Now, I wrote a full-length comedy called The Slacker, and I finished it back in 2013. I vetted it with 3 or 4 live groups and received excellent feedback. Some of it was great, some of it was painful, but it was all necessary. Now, it may not be my James Cameron Avatar, it's a comedy, but it's in development, it's finished, it's on the shelf right now, and it needs to be revisited. I need to take responsibility and get it in front of producers. I've allowed myself to be sidetracked by projects, and I don't have a better excuse for getting it out there. It is entirely my fault for not doing that. So I will say this, if you're going the feature length route, you have 2 options, really. You have 1 option. You get your story sold or optioned. Now, I won't go into that there, or here, rather, because I haven't done it yet either, although I am trying to pitch Powers and Principalities. Well, the second option, for most of us, is that you finance it yourself. And however you have to raise funds, you do it. Ideally, I will self-produce this story, The Slacker. I'm trusting God to direct my steps. And when you're near the end of writing your story, honestly, say a prayer, eat your vitamins, put it before the throne of grace every day, and just go where God says to go. I promise you, God's inviting you every day to join in on what he's doing. It's our job to listen, of course, and then to have courage to join him. And that's really on you entirely to listen and then execute the action or not. When your revisions are done and you're happy with the final product, you want to register your story with the U.S. Copyright Office, and it wouldn't hurt to register it with the WGA, that's the Writers Guild of America. Now, mind you, if you're doing a short video, this last step isn't really necessary unless you're planning on going far with this video, the festival circuit and so on and so forth. If it's some kind of in-house corporate video, I'm fairly confident you'll just be okay pounding out that script. But if it's a feature, you need to register it with the U.S. Copyright Office and or the WGA at the minimum. One is sufficient, but you may register with both. Fact, your story is copyrighted the moment you write it. Great! Why register? Well, these guys aid in the enforcement of your copyright. Should you ever need to fight for your claim to your story. Words of wisdom that we followed. Register your story. It's worth the 65 odd bucks to register with both of them. It takes a handful of weeks to get your confirmation in the mail, so plan ahead. Chapter shorts. It should go without saying, make shorts. Short videos to be exact. Good, bad, or ugly, crank them out. Robert Rodriguez said in his director's commentary on the El Mariachi DVD, every filmmaker has about 30 crappy films in them, so go ahead and get those out of the way. I'm paraphrasing the man here. You get the point. Do you have a phone? Great. You're ready to get started. There are countless apps on your phone that'll allow you to perform drag and drop editing of your files. Maybe even add some generic music. Will the video be pretty? If you're just starting out, no. I won't sugarcoat it. Point is, go ahead and shoot short films. Animate them. Write stories and go and shoot them. You'll learn all the facets of shooting a narrative piece, and you can only get better as you roll them out. That's the key. Any craft, be it film or video, must be practiced. But where do you find an audience to fine-tune your craft? After all, the good book says that plans fail for a lack of counsel. You need feedback. You won't make everyone happy, and you can't, nor should you. If you're extremely codependent, this will be a pain point. Press on. Don't cave in. Start looking for natural audiences. If it's a work video, you're taken care of. Unless you're a solopreneur or you're in a really small firm. But even then, 2 are greater than 1. In this present day and age, you could always show your video to the online community and ask for feedback. If you're shooting for a church, you're covered. You have a live audience there. Really, it boils down to one or the other. Take your video for a spin on YouTube or other platform like Facebook, or show it around to your community in its live environment, work, church, etc. An invaluable platform for me to gain reps was to shoot short videos for our church. They're goofy and definitely newbie material. I left them up for posterity. Just search Vimeo for Oasis Vineyard. We were a small bunch when I lived in Salt Lake City, so I was given total freedom many thanks to our senior pastor Daryl, to do narrative pieces for even the most trivial of events. For example, a lunch after church event. Playing my videos on a weekly basis in front of a live crowd provided me invaluable feedback. It's a different experience watching your video with 60 other people versus dumping it online on YouTube or Vimeo or Facebook. It builds character knowing whether your humorous moments are landing or not, whether your dramatic punches are effective or not, and so on and so forth. You can't get that same experience, not yet anyways, through our online communities. As of this writing, live streaming is accessible to everyone, but even though it's been around for a few years, it's still in its infancy. There are native apps like Facebook Live and YouTube that will allow you to do some very basic live streams, and give it some time, you'll find more ways for the crowds to engage with you in your live videos besides a like button or leaving a comment. If you're screening this video of yours to some big dogs in the organizational chart, do yourself a favor first and test out a screening with some other employees. Invite people that you don't know to that screening. You might as well. One, it'll tell them that their opinions are welcome, and two, their neutrality, hopefully, will balance out the folks who know you best and will want to sugarcoat everything. My screenwriting mentor at the University of Utah encouraged me with this quasi-story. How true it is may be irrelevant. Kind of like Coach Boone in Remember the Titans, lying about how many brothers and sisters he had. A story is a story. Now, my screenwriter mentor at the University of Utah said the Beatles, when they were starting out, spent day and night in Hamburg, Germany, fine-tuning their craft, discovering their sound. And they did it in the nastiest of places. We're talking dives, strip clubs, just seedy places. Again, I've never looked into their history. I've heard that story corroborated elsewhere. But the point of the story, again, the keyword story, is their resolve to wade through the tough times paid dividends. Because we all know the end result of their labor. They created synergy and ushered in a new wave of music that forever changed the whole tapestry of entertainment. So what does that say about you? The screenwriting teacher shared this story with me, and which I'm sharing with you to let me and to let you know that in spite of the shortcomings of my first feature full length, it had potential. It was his way of commissioning me. Keep at it. Make the shorts. Fine-tune your craft. The best directors don't spring up overnight, so stay positive. Dig deep. And so, aspiring auteur or casual, I've been tasked with making a video guy or gal, hand in hand with your writing a full-length story or a short video, you need to be well-versed in shorts. This is especially true if you're going to run and gun it like Robert Rodriguez with El Mariachi. It's the same thing that I did on our micro-budget feature, 12 Till Dusk. Guerrilla filmmaking describes the majority of us, yours truly included. You need to know how long a scene is going to take and schedule that time accordingly. Then, you need to commit to not go over it. You need to set up your gear, get in, and get out as soon as possible. When you're operating on a shoestring budget, you're shooting 9 times out of 10 on, with, and by the good graces of others. When I first landed in Utah, I was so anxious to get connected to my new filmmaking community. Through the university, I signed up to be a part of a 48-hour film challenge. More on that later. The crew from the university and we hadn't worked before, certainly not in unison. Communication was slow, leadership was so-so, and time from beginning to end lasted 18 plus hours, and I was not there past 18 hours. Sure enough, they turned in the final submission late, and we bombed that year. Don't get me wrong, I had a blast. I was stoked to be a part of an indie crew, but more importantly, I learned a lot that one weekend just from showing up for 18 hours on a low-budget shoot. The principal lesson was to honor your cast and crew and call wrap. The end of the day or the shoot. Call it when you say you will. Let your yes be your no. Let your yes be your yes and your no be your no. Goes back to what the King of Kings said. Be a man or a woman of your word. Make it easier on your people and be efficient with your time, which really means everyone's time. And that responsibility ultimately falls on you, the director, in an independent, low-budget effort. They are already giving up their time, their talents, their resources. Yeah, their gas is a resource. They paid for their gas. Honor their sacrifice. This is what shooting a multitude of shorts will do for you. You don't have to have a rock star library of short films under your belt. You don't, but you need to know how to rock and roll when the clock starts, whether that's day one of your feature or day two of your short video. To this day, I have managed to stay on schedule through dozens of my shoots, all but a few times. And the worst I ever stretched our time was 30 minutes, at most. Respect your crew and your on-screen talents. They have lives and families too. Chapter teaser. So you've been writing, you've been shooting the shorts, and you finally decide that you're going to try a full length or a solid short film, or forever regret sitting on your rear wondering why you didn't at least try. Shorts are great, and some of them are impactful, but personally, it'd be the full-length movies that I love most. I'll always quote Biff Tannen's "Make Like a Tree and Get Out of Here." And I'll always remember Andy Dufresne mailing his senator once, then twice a week, asking for the funds for the build-out of the prison library, until they finally caved and sent him the funds he requested. There's something unique about that 2-hour window. Just long enough to leave a lasting impression. Just short enough that you don't feel like you vegged for 5 hours on Netflix. Trouble is, you gotta have a teaser. Even for a short film, it helps to build momentum. How? Find a few actors, audition them, and go shoot your scene. If you've been shooting shorts for a while, this should be cake for you. And you can edit it in a short amount of time and poof, put that video out there. But why? Crowdfunding campaigns on sites like Kickstarter and Indiegogo, more often than not, have a video. Think of it like the trebuchet folks hauled around in the old days when it came time to lay siege to a stone castle. And maybe this example is overkill, but on a video on your crowdfunding site, well, it's just another tool on the belt for getting the machine going and cracking the surface of this beast you call a movie. Gives the rest of the world a sneak peek. And its production affords you the opportunity of testing out crew and actors. Bottom line, you need a teaser. What? Crowdfunding? That's a topic for our next section. For now, get that teaser going. Call up your crew. Start it now. A full-out trailer is hard to come by when you're living in a van down by the river. Settle for a scene or a short commercial in lieu of the traditional 2-minute trailer that maps out your movie, which you can easily assemble in post-production. Chances are you don't have everything lined up for a longer treatment. And by everything, I mean actors, locations, script, etc. Hopefully you're starting way ahead of production with these details and not waiting till the last minute like this guy. We acted as soon as we had the idea, but we rushed pre-production. Thankfully, we were spared any mishaps. You might not be so lucky. Allow plenty of time to map out pre-production before production starts. We shot our teaser over the course of a day by the Salt Air. It's out by Salt Lake. It's this beachy, smelly place. It's nestled right up against the Interstate I-80, and the brine shrimp poo, I'm told, fills the air with this musk that sometimes reaches as far into the valley as the Salt Lake suburbs. It was May of 2013. I hadn't even finished the script to 12 Till Dusk. All I knew was I had to get something promotional going, so I scrambled through the story that had been juggling around in my head ever since the original Westerns version, the one I wrote during my first year of film school at the University of Utah. The original Western didn't feature this idea, but my modern rewrite did. See, a lot of the great stories have this sense of urgency to them. Urgency, when crafted right, keeps the plot going because it's sustainable. Conflict. And conflict is what propels your story from A to B. For the Western, modern though it was, one of the biggest hurdles I faced was the copious amount of costume changes that you normally have in a movie. So, when rewriting the story, I realized I needed something connecting to keep the story limited to the span of a few chronological hours and yet maintain tension. I decided my hero Seth would be poisoned. It was one of my Favorite scenes. The hero winds up on some beach. I grew up in awe of Saving Private Ryan. Hero winds up on the beach, dazed and confused and with this pulsing pain in his chest and his abdomen. A shadowy, foul-mouthed figure would arrive on the scene and immediately be hostile when he found a person there in the middle of his drug shipment. It takes place about 16 minutes into the story, and it kicks off Act 2 with a bang! I ended up reshooting this entire scene by a lake in a small town called Stockton, outside of Salt Lake County, because the Saltaire location was home to many concerts, attracted a lot of attentions and casual visitors. When I phoned the Marine Patrol to shoot the teaser, they were okay with me hauling a 12 gauge out there in the desert. Clearly, others had as well. Used shells littered the sandy floor. Or was it really sand? Again, the shrimp poo story is what a lot of locals stick to. And maybe it's true, but I've never looked into it. It looks like sand and smells like something fierce. That's all I know. When I called the officials a second time to shoot the real scene, and this time around my actor Marcus would have a full beard, they hit me with the red tape and a 60-day turnaround to any sort of permit requested. Guys, gals, I'm an indie filmmaker. You are too, or some sort of craftsman where some measure of rebellion is the norm. Take that word with a grain of salt. By rebel, I mean you have to innovate. You have to think outside the box, and you have to take no in stride. When it comes to lugging around guns as props in a movie, especially in this post-9/11 culture we live in, I wasn't about to show up a second time. Not without the parent blessing of the local authorities. But you have to be rebellious. You get a no? You go elsewhere. If you're told your art is too cliche, too niche, you pack your bags and you try elsewhere. Seth Godin went to 900 or more publishers to release one of his books, and they all said no before he finally found the one. You just have to go elsewhere, which is why we ended up in Stockton, Utah. Shooting outdoors can be tricky, especially when being blown away by gale force winds. Sunscreen, coolers of food, water, a tarp or a tent, a blimp, and a cattail for your mic, whatever they call that thing, and shooting at midday all help to mitigate the challenges of shooting outside. Pack 'em up! We brought in a DP/camera operator and a makeup artist who ultimately did not join us for the real shoot. They're both very talented individuals, but time, family, and other commitments pulled them away from the longer project. But we're thankful. And we were thankful to have them along for the ride for that teaser. That's a benefit of being in this sort of indie outfit. You get to try some talent out, figure out what works, and if nothing else, extend your network that much further. We got to the Saltaire Beach around 9 a.m., and we wrapped and we were out of there by 6 p.m. I was working with a DP that I had never worked with before, and so our chemistry was developing on the spot. Again, great guy who I have respect for, but we didn't vet one another out before the shoot, so the whole process took about 7 hours from start to finish instead of the 2 to 3 hours it would have taken under other circumstances. That's my fault entirely, and no one else's. If you're told that your art is too cliche, too niche, you pack your bags and you try elsewhere. I hope you take that away, if nothing else, from this chapter. The edit took another day or so. It was a whole scene. What normally would have been a 3-minute scene boiled down to 30 seconds, give or take. Teaser. There's a reason when you use that word. It's a promo. You're not promoting some mundane household item like bleach. It's not a TV sport for Henry Ford's new pickup. Get your crowd pumped. Show them what you're up to. But for Pete's sake, don't show them a 3-minute clip. We live in an age of all things instant. Attention spans diminish by the day. Keep that in mind.